Got another one for y'all today. Are y'all ready to laugh? Get over to the Critical Drinker and subscribe. Tell them Tyrone Magnus sent you. Let's get this.
Riddle me this, dear viewer. When you're a movie studio that's flush with cash but short on imagination and creativity, and you want to keep exploiting an old franchise with a proven track record, but you've written yourself into a corner with poor storytelling decisions and left your franchise feeling stale and played out, or you've killed off characters that you wish you hadn't, or maybe the actors are getting too old and too expensive, what would you do? If your answer is to hire talented writers to dig you out of the hole that you've made for yourself in a way that's logically consistent and emotionally satisfying, or create new and interesting characters to replace the ones that are aging out, or even take a chance on a whole new IP that might be risky at first but offers up greater creative freedom and rewards in the long term, then clearly you're not thinking like a modern Hollywood executive. No, instead what you do is fall back on one of the laziest and contrived storytelling tropes since the rise of the unstoppable, infallible girl boss. I'm talking, of course, about multiverses.
Here's where I disagree. I know a lot of fans think that things like multiverse or time travel are lazy writing tropes, and I just say that I love time travel and multiverse, but it just has to be done right. As long as it's done right, I think it's fine. You know what I'm saying? So you can look at stuff like Back to the Future and Terminator 2, even Terminator, time travel, I think was done right. Two different theories of time travel, though, right? In those movies, right? But done right nonetheless. Classics, very entertaining. I think that it can be done right. So I'm fine as long as they do it right and make it enjoyable. But I know a lot of people don't like it, so.
If ever you needed an example of something that sounds good on paper but becomes a complete disaster the more it's actually used, then multiverses are the thing for you. And that's not to say that it's an objectively bad idea by itself.
Right. Like No Way Home, right? It was done well, you know?
In fact, what I hope to show with this video is that when it's properly implemented, it can actually be a very effective storytelling device. No, the problems creep in when it's put into the hands of lazy hack writers who either can't or won't work within the rules of the established universe, or lack the imagination to move the story forward, and instead devolve into the cinematic equivalent of a hyperactive toddler banging different toys together. Now, I say multiverses because, let's be honest, it's a pretty good catch-all term for what's actually a much broader and more diverse problem in the industry, and in reality it covers pretty much everything from alternate realities to branching timelines and lazy half-explained retcons of past events.
Yeah.
Each method is slightly different, but it all adds up to the same basic problem, and that's what I'm keen to tackle here today. So buckle up as we embark on another adventure into why modern movies suck. First up, let us try to understand the reason for using multiverses in a story, because there has to be some kind of motivation for doing them, right? Well, if I had to sum it up with...
To tell you the truth, before he even gives his reason, you know what I think the reason is? You can play out a lot of different scenarios, and I think the comic books do this too. You can play out a lot of different what-if scenarios without killing off the main timeline. The fundamentally... the original characters that you've always used. You can do everything you've always wanted to do with them and even try them out. Because if you want to try a particular story out that might be a little bit out there with the main character of your main original timeline, people could get really pissed off. However, if you do it with someone in another universe or a different timeline that's a different version, the fans don't care as much about them. You can kill them off, you can do crazy things, you can make them turn evil, you can make them kill their wife, you can make them do all this crazy stuff. But that was just an alternate universe. It wasn't the real Peter Parker. It wasn't the real Bruce Wayne. So I think that's why they do it a lot. Also, they do it to correct their mistakes. So if they did something wrong in the main timeline, the main continuity, then they can bring someone or fix something with time travel and with multiverse stuff.
Two simple words, then they would probably be, what if?
See?
One of the great aspects of storytelling is speculating on the road not taken and what effect it might have had on your favourite story and characters. Like, what if Darth Vader offered Luke the chance to join him in Empire and Luke said, "You son of a bitch, I'm in!" Or what if Saruman managed to steal the One Ring for himself? Or Obi-Wan Kenobi died instead of Qui-Gon Jinn? Or Khan defeated Kirk and went on to build a new civilization for himself? Or General Bison was finally able to build Bisonopolis with an even bigger food court?
Game over!
All of these things are pretty interesting to speculate on because they allow us to indulge our own imagination and creativity, to think about what we might have done if we were in charge of telling the story. Hollywood studios understand that same desire, and just like anything else where there's a latent demand for something, sooner or later they'll find a way to exploit it for money. And really, multiverses are the quickest and easiest way of doing it. Wish that Tony Stark had survived his final battle with Thanos? Don't worry, we can just hop into a different dimension and there he is, alive and well. Wish that Finn had become the last Jedi instead of Rey? Well, it happened an infinite number of times in other realities, and all it takes is a jump into a space whale or a bit of dicking around in the world between worlds to see it happen.
Plus, that was what was supposed to happen, right? Wasn't Rey and Finn supposed to become Jedis? But they trashed that idea. For the Force is and how well did that work out for you?
Wish that Kyle Reese was still alive after Terminator 1. Nothing a bit of time travel can't fix. Pretty much anything is possible because you're no longer bound by the rules of the existing universe or even what happened in it up until that point.
That's right.
It's literally a dream come true for any writer brought into a long-running franchise with a ton of lore and backstory and tedious rules to remember, because it allows them to basically ignore all of it and do whatever the fuck they feel like.
You know what I want? I want them to do a new Star Wars trilogy. Make that whole story a what if, and I want them to start it out by Luke Skywalker waking up like this. Bad dream you had. Yoda's ghost sitting over there. You have no idea, Master Yoda.
Yeah, so Darth Vader can shoot bolts of force lightning out of his arse now, and I don't care that he's dead and that's impossible because this is a different reality, you see? Hurry up and bring me another line.
Singly! I heard that Vader can't shoot force lightning because it would interfere with his suit. That's the reason why he doesn't shoot it.
Oh, yeah, that's the shit. The avenues for exploring new paths and possibilities are quite literally unlimited, but so are the problems that they create, and this is the heart of the issue here. See, the only reason we as the audience ever get invested in a story, any story really, is because of stakes. If a character gets killed halfway through the story, then just like in real life, they're gone forever. It doesn't matter how much you like them or how badly you want them to pull through, they're dead and they're not coming back. If they're a well-written character that the audience empathizes with, then it creates a genuine sense of loss and grief, almost...
I will tell you this, one thing with stakes, I haven't been a person that has really cared too much about stakes as long as the story's still good. So, for example, I remember when I was growing up, there was a time when the two guys that were really battling it out in the movie theaters were Jean-Claude Van Damme and Steven Seagal. And I noticed that in Jean-Claude Van Damme's movies, he would have much more of a challenge with his enemies in his movies than Steven Seagal did. Steven Seagal could not lose. This dude was an unstoppable wrecking machine. And I loved that about his movies. And I think his movies actually did better the Van Dams, even though they were at competition with each other. So that's one of those things where I'm like, yeah, I really don't care if the good guys just kicking ass the majority of the time. That cool. Once Steven Seagal shows up, you know everybody's getting their butt kicked. You know, it's a sign of relief, and you know the day is saved. It never bothered me that, you know, like I remember The Rock talking about Superman one time, and he said something about how, you know, you're just so powerful that one day you're just like, you don't relate to it, and you want somebody to just punch him in the mouth. I personally don't care if he stays invincible. Like, I don't care. You know what I'm saying? Like One Punch Man is a parody on that. And on that invincibility of a character. And I absolutely love One Punch Man. I do. Like, it is one of my favorite anime of all time. And I would put it in my top 10. Maybe even my top 5. And it's, you know, it's not even gotten that far. Just the first season. It may be in my top 5 or top 10. You know what I'm saying? That's how much I liked it. And I was okay with the second season. Hopefully this third season, they absolutely destroy it. But I just think it needs to be done right. I really don't like to see my favorite characters die. I don't. All for the sake of story. I don't. Just because you made me cry, no. They could have had Tony Stark snap his fingers and be fine. You know, maybe, you know, Doctor Strange, Wizard, his, you know, pain away, his injuries away. You know what I mean? Like, they did, you know, like, yes, they brought a lot of emotion out of me. It was a great story, you know. And yes, you could argue, like, yeah, well, if he had lived, it might not have really been. I'm not like that. So, you know, it just is what it is. And now they're struggling. They're probably trying to find a way to bring him back because they need him, because their storytelling has been so horrible after that. But if they had done it right, they would have never had to bring him back. Correct? Right.
It's like you've lost a real friend. That right there is the power of storytelling when it's done right. And the more the writers raise the possibility that even the most popular characters can die and be lost forever, the more they raise those all-important dramatic stakes, because something that you care about is now in danger. But what happens when you introduce multiverses into the equation? Well, quite simply, you remove any sense of stakes. Suddenly death becomes less of a permanent tragic loss and more of a temporary inconvenience, a bit like restarting a level on a video game. Who cares that Character X heroically sacrificed their life to save their friends, because in an infinite number of other realities he's completely fine. Shit man, if we really want to, we can even grab one of those other versions and pull him into our own reality as a convenient replacement.
In No Way Home, when Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker got stabbed in the back, I thought he was going to die. And I'm wondering if they had an ending where he died and when he didn't die, and fans hated it. See, they were going to kill Rocky in Rocky 5. He was supposed to die, but the test screens were horrible for that. They didn't want him to die. That's what I'm talking about. I don't understand why people always feel like a character needs to die. They don't. We could have a really kick-ass story with stakes, but everything turned out fine. You can. There have been stories like that, and they've worked. Okay? No Way Home to be one of them. If he had died, though, I would have been okay with it because of how it was done. I would have been. However, it wouldn't have been my first choice. So he ends up living, you know, and we're going to get to see more of Toby in the future.
I mean, we wouldn't want the audience to feel bad or anything, which really is the narrative equivalent of having your cake and eating it. On a personal level, individual stakes no longer exist because characters no longer exist as single, unique entities that actually matter. Instead, each one is just an insignificant variation of an infinitely larger whole, with endless variety and complexity that can never truly die or succeed at anything, and so there's literally no reason to get invested in their struggle because there's infinite variations of it out there. It's the same problem when it comes to time travel, which is another bullshit method of undoing past events and rewriting your own story to suit your current needs. Like, how many times has the Terminator franchise been ripped up, rebuilt and rewritten, constantly changing and contradicting its own rules in the process?
They have gone too far with that one. and it's always the same Terminator, and it's just the way to fit Arnold in there, shoehorn him in there. You know, he really should have ended it too. That's it. The one they did with what's his name, with Batman, with Christian Bale, I thought that was it's kind of sleeper good. It's better than what it performed as, but it definitely should have been better, But it had. I feel like it had some type of promise in it. Yeah, I think you guys know what I mean by that. It felt like kind of like a soft reboot or so with a new, with a different John Connor, But anyway, yeah. But I liked Terminator Genesis. A lot of people hated that, and I liked it. And I truly did want to see an Arnold T-1000 in another movie. I did. I really did. But they didn't do it. And then they gave us that big old piece of trash after that.
Everything we saw in the future was predetermined, and trying to change it actually causes it to happen in the first place. Actually, no, forget that. We just changed the future to make it better now. Nah, actually, the future was always going to happen this way. You only managed to delay it. We sort of agree with that idea, but here's a bunch of additional tacked on shit that you never wanted or needed. Nope, in fact, now we've gone back and messed with the past as well because we're fucking idiots. Wait, hold my beer. Ignore what everyone else said because we've got an even worse storyline to replace it. At a certain point, it becomes a complete waste of time to care about anything that happens in those movies because the next one's probably just going to undo everything you just saw. The T-800 sacrificing himself for the good of humanity was an awesome scene in Terminator 2, but now that I've seen it happen like 3 times in 3 different movies, it's not quite so special anymore.
Right.
Now, believe it or not, Hollywood writers actually understand this problem that multiverses and branching timelines create for the audience.
Not stupid.
Unfortunately, their solution is almost as bad as the problem it's trying to solve because it involves ratcheting up the stakes to literally astronomical levels. Now it's not just a group of likable characters you care about that are in danger, or even the entire human race. It's literally the entirety of all existence across the multiverse. Wow, that's really big. And big equals good, right?
Wrong.
Because here's the thing, the human mind isn't really designed to comprehend the world in terms of infinite possible realities across infinite universes, especially not on the kind of visceral emotional level that you need to sustain dramatic tension. Instead, it becomes nothing but an intellectual exercise, as dry and disengaging as a stock market summary. You understand the words that are being said and what's being risked on an intellectual level, but you don't really feel the magnitude.
That was so irritating when she killed Mr. Fantastic. And the rest of them, by the way, was so stupid. But it's one of those multiversal things where it's like, don't worry. In the original timeline, we still have another Mr. Fantastic and Professor X.
Magnitude of it, because how can you? How can you even begin to comprehend something
To
so
me, that was
impossibly
done wrong.
vast? This problem also gives rise to a phenomenon that I can best describe as antagonist dilution. Like, remember Agent Smith from The Matrix? Remember how he was this really sinister, intimidating antagonist because he was intelligent and ruthless and physically powerful and basically unkillable? And it took Neo literally dying to discover the power needed to defeat him? He was a pretty good villain. I liked him. Then cast your mind forward to The Matrix Reloaded, where Smith was able to replicate himself to the point where Neo ends up fighting dozens, if not hundreds of him all at the same time. Remember how much less intimidating and interesting he became? Because individually he was no threat at all, and his only strength lay in his sheer weight of numbers.
No. I disagree. Reloaded, while it's not the better of the 2 movies of the first and the second, it is my favorite. I could watch that movie every day. I love it.
Right there is antagonist dilution. Just like with the multiple realities problem,
I thought it made them
alternative
scarier
multi-brains
that
are
you could do
conditioned
that.
to
More
view characters as individuals, not as facets of a much larger whole. Antagonists are much more effective and memorable when they're conglomerated into a single powerful entity rather than a collection of weaker individuals. It's one of the many reasons that Kang the Conqueror was a fucking terrible idea as a villain, notwithstanding Jonathan Major's ridiculous overacting and career-ending legal problems. It's that we can't really view antagonists as a threat when you show them getting beaten.
There are people that say he overacted that. I think he did good in Ant-Man, in the Wasp. I wasn't a fan of even though he's a good actor, I wasn't a fan of the character in Loki season 1. And the second season was okay for me. You know, he was okay for me. But a lot of people didn't like it. They found his acting to be hokey and extra. So, I mean, they're entitled to their opinion, but I get it. It's really good in Creed 3, though. It was really good in Creed 3.
Again and again by low-level characters and try to wave it all away by saying, well, that's just one example of him. There's millions of other more dangerous versions out there, don't you know? No, we don't, and we don't care how dangerous he is as a collective whole because that's not how we view people, and we never will.
They made him look so weak in Ant-Man. How he got beaten and everything. I know the whole explanation with the ants, but I was sitting there like, this guy is supposed to be so terrible and crazy and, you know, oh no, he's the next Thanos, and y'all had him beat like that? What are y'all doing?
Now, much as I've shat on the concept of multiverses, I also want to make it clear that the real problem lies in the implementation, the overuse and the lazy short-sighted focus on novelty over meaningful storytelling, rather than it just being a fundamentally bad idea in the first place. Plenty of movies and shows have made effective use of alternate realities, like the TNG episode Tapestry, where a dying Picard laments the reckless youth that ultimately landed him in this position in the first place, and is given a chance to see what his life would have been like if he'd lived more sensibly and cautiously. Yeah, he ends up surviving, but the problem is that he becomes a boring arsehole who never amounts to much of anything, to the point where the real Picard decides he'd rather die as the man he is now than live on as the one he just saw. It's a potent reminder of the importance of
Always
risks,
irritated me. I
seizing
could not
opportunities
stand
and
him.
making the most of what life has to offer, and it's all contained within a single episode. Another example comes from Red Dwarf, a British sci-fi comedy series about a group of weirdos and slackers stranded millions of years from home. In the episode Dimension Jump, a new version of Arnold Rimmer arrives in our reality from a different universe, better known in this case as Ace Rimmer. Unlike our version, this one's charismatic, charming and heroic. Everyone else is smitten with
a
him,
lot of
except
jokes
Rimmer
there.
himself, who takes an instant dislike to him because he assumes the guy must have had all the opportunities and lucky breaks that he never got. He's a living example of what Rimmer could have been if he'd had a better lot in life, and it feeds into the persecution complex that pretty much defines his character throughout the show. But in a neat little twist, we ultimately find out that Ace was kept back a year at school when he was still a kid, while our Rimmer was allowed to go on and graduate as normal. Instead of breaking him, the humiliation of his failure forced Ace to work harder and better himself, ultimately becoming a much stronger and more capable man as a result, whereas our Rimmer became complacent and blamed everyone else for his failures in life. It's an interesting little character study and an excellent example of how failure can be the making of a person or the breaking of them. It all just depends on how you deal with it. I could go on and on with this stuff, but the point I'm making here is that multiverses can be a useful tool in giving characters and the audience a different perspective on things they normally take for granted, but they function best when they're used sparingly. Neither of the examples I gave here had world-changing consequences for the wider show they were part of. They didn't try to frame themselves as epic confrontations where the fate of all reality hung in the balance. They were just little windows into other possible futures that eventually snapped shut once they'd served their purpose, and in both cases they were used to support excellent writing rather than compensate for its absence. That right there is the big difference between them, and it's one that Hollywood writers would do well to remember. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
Well, my friends, what do you think? Post comments down below. If you enjoyed my reaction, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and share.